my name is Zeb Jennings, and I'm the Chief Information Officer here at eFinancial. I would say the biggest pain point was time to market for the business. So, as part of scripting and outbound sales, there's a lot of changes. Sometimes the questions change, and the time it would take for the business to be able to get those changes, get them in, validate that they're working, was making it much harder for them to be as successful as they wanted to be. It was actually 100% gated behind the development team. They had no access to it at any level. The smallest of the changes took 3 to 4 days. And some of the larger changes, especially if some of the data didn't exist or there were questions that didn't exist and data needed to be mapped to certain variables within our systems, it could take 5 days, 6 days, and when you're running 2-week sprints. So the experience was they still had access to a scripting tool or a tool similar to that, but it was a lot more sparse. There were fewer questions, there were fewer ways for them to access certain things within the system. As you work in a regulated industry, depending on the state that you're in, sometimes there's different disclaimers that you read or things that you have to talk to that individual about, and the system didn't contain those, so those were kept in subsystems. So if they got someone in a resident of a state that had a specialized approach, then they would have to go grab that from somewhere else and read it to them, to where we've now been able to integrate all of that in, and not just integrate it in. They don't even have to remember, because we can detect what state they're in and we can automatically send them through a different flow, which has that information built into the script itself. So I would say that there's been a lot of process that's changed around that, right? It's completely changed the way that we do training, changes the way the business interacts with the tool. But one of the things is it really gets into some of the sales processes, right? A lot of the way that the flow used to work, it was a more generic flow. The sales agent would be responsible for figuring things out, like what products to sell and how to approach the customer. And now we actually have the ability to, based on the information coming in on the call, populate different Zingtree scripts that are specialized in selling certain products that we know these individuals qualify for. So which groups get which scripts, and all of that has changed pretty dramatically. Yeah, the two biggest processes that it impacts is, so Zingtree is used by our ops team as an outbound support dialer. So right, as part of life insurance, there's a lot of follow-up, there's a lot of signatures that are involved, and with this, basically the process changed to allow the retention team to actually help participate in some of that work with the agents, to where the old process was that because the agent was the person that talked to them and had the rapport and had the data, they had to be the one that would call them back and do some of this administrative tasks. By having the data now available in Zingtree and others are able to actually look at it and see what happened within the interaction, we've been able to change the process to where our ops team can be more involved. And then I would say the case management aspect is also what it's tied into. Retention and some of those other teams, right? When you're following up on the policies after they've been placed and making sure that the customer got the product that best supports their needs. So some of the bigger ones would be, we had talked about how we've been able to laser focus the scripts around certain products. So there are KPIs around things like average premiums and things of that nature that we've been able to influence in a positive nature. So it's allowed us to better understand the situation and then offer the right product at that time. Our onboarding efficiency went up significantly. As I had mentioned before, we were training in a system where people had access to documents, going out to SharePoint and reading things before interacting with individuals, and now that's all available at their fingertips and they don't have to leave the system. And so I would say the time to onboard somebody was significantly impacted through the Zingtree tool. The other side of it is the business being able to actually influence change within the process and within the sales flow was exponential as it relates to time, right? And now they could make a change in minutes. I would say that the biggest impact and why we went with Zingtree is control of our data. There's a lot of data coming in through these tools, and we have the ability to remove data. There's a lot of things like DNC and DSAR in those particular types of processes where we're able to quickly get in and either identify the data for the customer or to de-identify it or delete it upon their request. And it's very easy to do within the tool. We operate in the PHI space, so the data that we have is the most sensitive data that you can have about an individual. Mishandling that data or having it exposed is literally the worst thing that can happen. And that's why having control of that is so important. So we're going to start with the customer facing flows. So the way that we've integrated Zingtree for our sales agents, a lot of that data is built into the scripts. And we do have some training use cases where we want to expose the knowledge assist for training purposes as part of our simulations and tests. But the first item that we're doing is customer facing, being able to come to the site and get that information as they're browsing around, being able to give them a tool to say, hey, is this the right product for me? There's a couple of different ways to do it. The two that I would say are probably the biggest that we're looking into now is the online application, the ability to collect data, to interact with the customer, ask questions, and make determinations on where to send them. And essentially, it's a virtual AI agent that's helping them fill out their application, and they're asking questions, and it's providing feedback and insight as they move forward. And on the other side of that, on the calls, it's having AI available to understand sentiment, take in the data as they're interacting with the customer to help drive product recommendations to further enhance opportunity with them. Are there cross-sell or upsell opportunities that are being pulled out of their tone or their sentiment or their engagement or some of the data that's coming in? It's been a great relationship all the way from the sales process through implementation and now through the continued growth of the partnership. It's been one of the better vendor experiences I've had within my career.